Alright guys, I went to an auction preview day here recently looking at some equipment, and I'm going to show you a video of what I saw when I was up there and then talk through the results of that auction and how crazy equipment prices are getting, or how crazy auctions are getting. Alright guys, over here at an auction, looking at a 442 Bobcat and an E50 traipsing around in the mud. Can't tell, I don't think this thing's even got AC. Pull the dipstick. Always check for smell of antifreeze, because that's a big problem. Definitely haven't decided to clean anything. They don't have the keys in any of these small ones for some reason. I don't know why. Get keys in the bigger stuff. Can't even tell what the hour meter is without a key. It's a little Yanmar 30. I don't know. Don't look too bad. Not all beat up. Don't know I'm gonna bid on any of it though. No AC. Looks like. It's been running. It's warm. Hose here's folded up. Doesn't look horrible to work on, unless you had to fish something down real low. Alright guys, I'm going to go through some of these snapshots of these auction results here with you and talk through a little bit of this equipment and why I think some of these prices are maybe a little bit extreme for this equipment. It was a weird auction as far as I went up there the day before the auction to inspect the equipment. It's about 3 hours north. It's a big retirement auction, Packard Excavating. Sort of the odd thing, they had all the keys, majority of all the keys for all this equipment. You had to go find the owner or somebody that worked for him to get them to come over there and start the equipment up for you. So the keys weren't in the machines like they are majority of all the other auctions I've ever been to. So that was a little odd. The more I looked at this stuff, the more I realized it wasn't worth my time to wait on that guy, because he of course had other people were up there wanting him to run stuff for him. So I wasn't going to wait around after I had looked at this equipment and some other equipment, and I'll talk you through that. I was interested in this 442 or the E50. The 35, that Yanmar 35, I was just looking at it because it's comparable to my 331. So the 442 looked real good as far as its age. The one big thing about it, it had more hours on it. So the auction item description for it listed, I think said 5,000 hours. Talking with a guy up there, he actually told me it had 8,000 hours on it. And later when I came back home looking through the pictures, I found a picture with the hour meter in it. It was hard to make out. in the picture. If you zoomed in real close, you could see it had about 8,100 hours on it. So that's really getting up there. The thumb had been welded. Uh, Pins were a little bit sloppy. Again, I wasn't able to operate it, but you can just go up and grab the boom and sort of push and pull on the boom and see, like, get an idea if some things are sloppy or not. Tracks were in good shape. A couple hoses had been crushed a little bit. The cab was pretty leaky, and I believe there was something else not great with it. The AC compressor belts were cut, and that's not a huge deal, but it just kind of goes. It starts pointing to the fact that, all right, the AC compressor either had a problem, maybe it just chucked the belts and they decided not to put them on there. It starts pointing to kind of a lack of maintenance issue. So that starts to sort of concern me a little bit. So the night before the auction, when I came home that night, got on looking at this stuff, it was already up to 18,750. That's starting to climb up there for an 18,000 hour machine. No, I was willing to pay more for it than that, but I knew it was going to go a lot higher because I knew even if somebody on site didn't get it, the internet bidders would probably run in sight unseen and really bid this thing high. So the sold price on this thing was 32,500. Actually, it went to somebody on site. I was kind of surprised by that. I mean, it was a good looking machine. Maybe they got on it and ran it and saw something else that I didn't, but for 8,000 hours, 32.5 is getting up there for an '09 Bobcat 442 that there's just not that many of running around. So the other one I looked at was the E50. This one is really what started to turn me off from this place. Now, the tracks weren't in bad shape. Nothing looked crazy bad. One of the joysticks was really floppy. Again, this isn't operating it, but you can just tell the springs and the plungers were pretty well wore out. It had about 3,400 hours on it, I believe, or 3,200 hours, something around those numbers. The big thing that I started to notice, I think in the video I pulled the dipstick, the oil looked pretty good. Looking at the hydraulic tank, it had no oil in the sight glass. I pulled the cap, looked down. I didn't pull the strainer or the screen, but there was none even touching the strainer or the screen, and that strainer went in there real deep. So it didn't have much hydraulic oil in it. The coolers were all caked with oil and mud. Again, it just starts pointing to this sort of lack of maintenance problem that if they don't take care of the machines, I don't know that I really want them that much. And the other thing, fuel cap here, if you look in the picture, it's not there. It wasn't there on site either. So the fuel tank's open to, of course, the day I was there, it was muddy. It's open to the rain. I'm sure it had water in it, dirt, dust, all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, at least throw a rag in there or something. So this thing, let's see here. The night before, they had pushed it up to 21.5. Again, I figured because it looked pretty decent. Windows weren't all busted out of it and stuff, that the internet would push it pretty high. So 21.5 wasn't crazy, but you know it's going to go higher than that. So it ended up selling at 38.5, which for what I saw with it was kind of crazy. And amazingly, it went to somebody on site. So somebody saw something else in this machine that I didn't. So let's see here. And then here it is again. Well, the little Yanmar 35, it actually went less than I thought it would. I couldn't verify the hours again, didn't have the key, but at 1,600 hours, I didn't think 20,000 was a bad price for a 35 Yanmar. It didn't seem that tore up either. This Bobcat, I don't think that extra bucket came with it. I think it was marked with an item number and it's sold separately. Again, you can see it says only 5,000 hours. It actually had 8. Cabelco with 9,000 hours, it went for 22. That might not have been a bad buy, but I did look at some of these bigger excavators, even though I'm not in the market. You can see it actually did go to an internet bidder. somebody saw something that they didn't like up there on site, or just weren't in the market for that size machine. But all these machines were just kind of rough, the bigger ones, and then the skid steers. I did browse around for a skid steer. This Mustang was actually one of the ones that they had like a feature picture of in the auction brochure. And truthfully, $18,000, that's a fairly low price. It had 4,800 hours. I got in it, I almost broke the side window out trying to put the lap bar down because the right side of the lap bar had completely rusted off, so the lap bar was only holding on by one side. So when I kind of jerked it down, it went to the side more than anything and smacked the window real hard. But luckily, it didn't break it. It did track kind of straight. It actually had the key in it, so I actually fired it up. It started, ran good, had the key in it. Tracked forward and back. It might have been one track might not have been pulling quite as good as the other though. Had a big 84-inch bucket on it. I went to tilt the bucket down to try to pick the front end up, and I noticed the arms moved about 3 inches, so it looked like the packing's out of the cylinders. So it definitely needed a lot of work, and maybe at 1,800 that's not that bad of a price, but definitely was going to need a lot of work. Again, it started pointing to this is just a lack of maintenance, so I was starting to get leery on some of those excavators. But these other cases, they look pretty rough too. So close that out. Sorry, now why do I think those are kind of crazy prices for some of this stuff? This auction just happened today. So now here's a Bobcat E42 and E85. Let's check out this E85. 2015 E85, 3,600 hours. So it sold for 36,000. So for an extra $4,000, you could have had a machine with less than half the hours. Nothing was really wrong with this thing. I think it did mention a little slop here in the main pivot. But again, this is a Iron Planet / Ritchie Brothers. This machine did have the ironclad guarantee, so if it wasn't as described, you could dispute it. So again, that's not a bad price on that big of an excavator. Back up here. Here's the kicker. Bobcat E50. Now let's see here. This one really had nothing wrong with it. I think 3,400 hours, similar hours, a little bit newer, hydraulic thumb and all. And I was debating bidding on this thing today, truthfully. Still a little more than I want to pay because I like the conventional tail swing machines, truthfully. But yeah, I mean there was really nothing majorly wrong with this thing. And I like these Ritchie Brothers auctions because they go through, they rate everything. They This one doesn't have the oil sample, but a lot of them even take oil samples out of the engine. So this is one of the few places I would probably buy sight unseen again. Uh, so yeah, this machine, it might be a rental, but I guarantee that company, based on the quality and the condition of their machines, the operators they had at that company ran these things harder than a rental, I'm pretty sure. And then at least if this as this thing comes back to the shop, it's serviced regularly and cleaned. I mean, that's one other thing about that auction. I can't believe they didn't at least take the time to just pressure wash their machines off and clean them up, which based on the prices people paid for it, I guess they didn't have to. But somebody that bought that little E50, I'm not wishing them any bad luck, but they that is a real gamble compared to something like this that you could have got even cheaper. So again, it's one of those things you really need to buyer beware on some of these auctions. It, sometimes I don't know if people just get lost in the auction and bid the price way up because of the competition or what. Now this little E42, I was kind of looking at it. It's a little further than I wanted to travel. You see it sold at a low price. So this thing does have a hydraulic pump issue. They state that in here. This one doesn't really have a guarantee on it. But they say basically the hydraulic system is not functioning properly. It's weak. The drivetrain doesn't engage, and it started and ran 2,200 hours. So that one held this one back. But again, at least they tell you that kind of stuff. And at 2,200, this is probably one that would have been not bad to pick up, fix the hydraulic issue, and have you a pretty good little machine. The problem is going and paying full price like they did on that E50 and that other auction, and not really knowing what you have. That's just what I don't understand about the auctions, is why some people pay so high for something you really don't know that much about. If anything, you probably ought to be shooting low. But that's probably wraps up my rant there, I guess, on auctions and just some of the stuff I look for, why I look for it. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you learned a little bit something more about auctions. And like and subscribe. There's always more to come. I'm still looking for a piece of equipment. So hopefully I'll find one soon. I'll definitely take some video and show it off.